Hey, here, everybody who's tuning in for the first time. This is Alexander Rolanitis. I have a guest on the show, Tom Ziebro, and we are talking about lots of different areas in life on self-improvement and exploring Tom's journey and being in technology and having a really unique insight in Amazon and cloud and all different things that are going on in the business world, especially in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area for any viewers. So thank you, Tom, for taking your time out of your day and joining me on this call.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of were just talking about the morning routine, and we're talking about a similar thread that we have in common, developing ourselves and trying to optimize for the best day. So would love to ask you how do you start your day, and what are the habits that you've put into place?
So for me, it's waking up early. I know that's something that's preached a lot in personal development circles, but I think that's geared towards individuals, right? Like some people stay up late, and that's the time where they get the most done, and they're totally not waking up early in the morning. But for me, I have ADD, so I'm out of bed at the crack of dawn. And a couple of years ago, I discovered that there's this massive connection between your brain and your gut. So for me, what I put in my body, how I feel myself, especially with probiotics, fermented foods and stuff like that, that is driving my brain power, and my brain is driving my day and what I accomplish and what goals I achieve. So I put a lot of attention into nutrition, what I'm putting into my body, and then taking care of my body. I've heard it said that people spend their health gaining their wealth, only later on in life spending their wealth to gain back their health. So I don't want to be that type of person, right? I want to, even if it takes away from some of my wealth building, I'm very intentional in what I'm putting in my body and how I'm treating my body, so that I can be around one day to enjoy my money and the fruits of my labor.
Yeah, well said, well said. So when you start your mornings, when do you wake up, and then how does the kind of first hour or two look like, and then where do you first eat your first meal?
So 5 a.m. is usually when I'm out of bed.
Nice.
A cup of coffee.
Respect on that.
Some water. I take some supplements. I do a Bible study. I have a little bit of time where I'm just reflecting on my day, checking my calendar, preparing for what's ahead. And then off to the gym. I spend about an hour at the gym. And then from the gym, my first meal is post-workout. I'm having a shake, usually protein, banana, spinach. A lot of everything I eat mostly is organic. And then from there, I'm jumping into work.
Very cool. So from 5 a.m., you wake up and you even give yourself some reflection time, which I've heard and I've done before. I don't do enough. I think there's even a lot of reminders that I'm hearing from people that I listen to allocate that time for reflection. So I really appreciate that you kind of almost first do that while you're drinking coffee, slowly getting ready, and then you move in action mode and you go to the gym and you do like an 45-minute, hour type of session before your day even starts.
Yeah,
starting
absolutely.
At 5 a.m.
Yeah, and I've tried working out in the evenings, but I found that life happens, right? So you come home and you've got to walk the dog. Kids need to go here. This needs to happen, and that gets pushed. So many people I talk to, because I do some health and fitness coaching on the side, and a lot of people say, well, I just can't get around to it. And my response is always, you have to build it into your day. It is more important for me to get to the gym than to work. Work will wait. Gym comes first. Because in reality, I'm only as good at work as I am and how I treat myself and what I prioritize in my life. So for me, that's early morning. But again, I know some people put that later in the day, but I've found most success, it happens when I just immediately, after that first hour in the morning or so, with reflection, heading off to the gym.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So, and it's very unique because I actually just started waking up early for the first time in my life. It was March 1st just about a month and a half ago now that I started waking up at 5:30.
Okay.
And now I've kind of pushed it to 6 a.m. just to kind of balance for my morning routine. But I love waking up, and I drink a Celsius, which is one of these like sports drinks, caffeinated things, and really does help me wire up and stay focused. And I also appreciate being able to go to the gym and just connect with people. And there's a whole new wave of gym people that I never met before. And by shifting up my schedule, I was able to meet like a whole new group of people and make new friends. And now every time I go in the gym, it's almost even it's a good like starting my day and getting into conversation and already like moving myself into a social flow, which I really
absolutely
like.
Yeah.
Before I was waking up and it would just be a simple routine. I did a couple other variations, but be able to start the day and already start talking with people, I think, and being at the gym versus just getting on the computer and just starting the kind of work day, which I end up having a lot of conversations throughout the day anyways, but it's always nice to, I think, start the day early and wake up with some motivation, or wake up and already have that mindset of, okay, like I'm going to go have a great day and counting my blessings, thinking about things I'm grateful for and what I'm manifesting. And then for me, my number one top priority is health ultimately, which is the health side of the nutrition, which you and I connect on. And then also the spiritual side. I think even just being aware that our health is more than just the food that we're putting in. It's our balancing our emotions. It's having a higher purpose and feeling more connected, I think, with all of this that we're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Waking up and heading off to the office, or just jumping straight into your day without being intentional. You're not, there's a portion of your life that, whether people realize it or not, you're creating by the thoughts that you're thinking, by the actions that you take, and being very intentional about that, especially in the morning before you've set about your day. You're able to control to a great extent what happens, or even maybe things that you have not planned for happen, but because of your programming and your outlook on the day, you're able to come at it with a positive spin versus saying, oh, great, this is how my day's going. I think of it as owning my day before my day owns me.
Wow, that's powerful. I like that. So how did this journey come about? Tell if you can share a little bit about your background and how you started getting into IT, and then if you even want to talk about a little of your the health fitness coaching that you do. Would love to hear, how did Tom Ziebro become who he is today?
Yeah. So, I can't say I've always been this way. I had ADD from an early age and didn't know it. Was undiagnosed until my 30s. But about that time, I've always been into health, always been into fitness, and it was just kind of a figuring it out. I was, full of energy with this ADD, and it was just a natural part of me, but I didn't have an understanding of it, and I didn't have any mastery over it. So I got into a lot of personal development. I got hooked up with some mentors who were able to show me what's down the road. This is what happens when you follow these steps. This is what you can do with your life. So I got into that. I did a lot of research, and then a lot of it was just, I would say the biggest piece was finding out how I'm wired. How did God make me? What are my gifts? What are my purposes? Why am I here? What are my strengths? And when I capitalized on those, I found out that I didn't have any boundaries. My only boundaries were what I placed on myself. So I put a lot of time into discovering my strengths. I took the Gallup Strengths Finders, if you've ever heard of that before. Took a lot of personality tests.
I've heard of the Myers-Briggs, and I've done that one.
Yep. So Strengths Finders really helps you dive into how you're wired and what your top 5 strengths are. Mm-hmm. And I got into that and took it. And of course, taking it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, kind of leaning into what it said my strengths were. And that's when I noticed things started to change. I started to become more dynamic. I started to draw attention at work and have people ask me questions. And at the time, I was experimenting a lot with diet, with nutrition, fitness, different types of workouts, CrossFit, you name it. I tried it all just to see how it affected my body. Even was trying to build muscle. I was drinking a gallon of milk a day for like 3 months, which I don't recommend. I gained weight, not good weight. And my cholesterol and my blood work was an absolute mess. But it was through this self-discovery that I really understood who I was. And it all came back to really having a solid understanding of what my strengths were, what I'm good at. There's things that I'm not good at that I should work on. Let's say maybe I'm not a good listener to my wife. Well, that is something I should work on. But then I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to work on that. Don't ever ask me to crunch numbers. I'll pay somebody to do that. So grabbing those strengths and just leaning into them. And it was kind of a natural process. It just continued to build, and I built up steam with it. And I just invested more and more time into personal development financially. I was spending well over $5,000 a year just on personal development. And that's when I saw the biggest improvement. And I realized, like, this is not money going out the door. This is money going out the door and bringing money back in with it. And that's kind of how things evolved. But in terms of IT, I was in the military. I was an intelligence analyst, and it sounded cool. There was a clearance, but it really didn't jive with me. I'm not very analytical in that way. I'm good at reading people. I'm good at connecting and understanding, but that wasn't the analytics that I was looking for. So I looked at top paying jobs with a clearance, and one of them was Linux administrator. So I said, okay, well, I'll learn Linux. So I got out and I started doing some Linux and Windows. And from there, I'm also a learner. That's one of my strengths. So I was excited by it, and it just started snowballing. And then about 3 years ago, I got into cloud, and that's where things just took off. And that was a combination of me discovering my strengths and leaning into that and tying that in with cloud. Things just took off. So
nice. And I think recently you're really focused on Amazon Web Services lately.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. So, and I think you even completed a recent certification?
So I have 8 AWS certifications, and recently got the AWS Subject Matter Expert badge, which you get selected to be a person who gives back to the exam. So helping them craft their exam questions, and which is a really exciting process and keeps me sharp in terms of those skills.
That is exciting. So, wow. First off, congratulations.
Thank you.
Having 8 AWS certs that's impressive. And then being able to contribute back on the test for Amazon. Wow. So in cloud storage, cloud computing, the data lakes and data warehouses of the world, where do you see the industry growing? How do you imagine the trend, or what do you see today that's that interests you, and where do you think it's going?
So Amazon is definitely huge, right? They're a cloud leader. They're light years ahead of everyone else in terms of the services that they provide and their scale and reach. But I see Azure as being a huge contender, and especially in the government spaces, I see that as being something that's going to definitely grow. Blockchain as well. I think blockchain is here to stay, regardless of how people feel about it. It is revolutionary. There are so many uses for it. It can be virtually applied anywhere and make things much better, safer. That aspect is going to be huge as well. But I do see with cloud adoption, definitely a move to Azure. And that's where I'm starting on now. I've had one Azure cert. I'm moving down that path for a little while. But I'm excited about what Azure brings to the table.
Yeah. So you're straddling both sides, which is always I think a great thing to do, right? Just making yourself more and more, have more utility to be able to serve whatever the solution your customer, the company, the mission that you're involved with, right, is looking for. And then I know we had the big Jedi contract get awarded to Microsoft, and I think even there's still some breakups, or I'm not sure what the latest is. Do you have the latest insight to?
I don't have the latest, but there's a lot of conflict there. I do think that there were some screw ups that led to AWS being able to challenge that effectively. And part of that was the Trump administration and comments that were made. But I do think that DoD did want to award that to Azure. So it was kind of unfortunate. I'm not sure where it is right now, but regardless of that, I do see the government is going to bring in, it serves their benefit to bring in more cloud providers and have that competition. And then also there's great offerings from Google Cloud. There's great offerings from Azure. Azure allows you to bring it into, on premises versus AWS that's just strictly off premises. And they are moving more to that on premises piece, but Azure has that where you could just drop it in your data center and have that cloud there. So a lot of interesting components, but I think more players in that field is more beneficial to everybody involved. So I'm hoping it does go to Azure.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. I believe the more opportunities that people can cater to either the niche needs or present their own, their own product in its format and its specifications, and ultimately the competition, I think, amongst Oracle, Google, Amazon, right, and Microsoft is definitely healthy.
Absolutely. 100%.
So if you had to imagine what does IT look like in 5 or 10 years?
That's a great question. It moves so fast. Within a 6-month period of time, what Amazon releases is absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, to stay abreast of just that one side of technology, you do see a lot of microservices. Kubernetes is huge in that push. I do see that is going to be a growing trend. Cybersecurity is not going anywhere. The need for that is greater and greater. So we're going to see more. And I think that's where blockchain has an interesting inroads. But I think we're going to see faster deployments for applications. You're going to see teams that are able to lift and shift from different cloud providers and not be so tied into ecosystem, the ecosystem of AWS versus Azure and Google Cloud. But, really what it comes down to is speed for people, speed to deploy, and the economy of scale. 10 years ago, a business had a hard time being a startup. Maybe 15 years ago, purchasing just tons of equipment, millions of dollars worth of equipment to put in a data center. And versus now being a startup, and from day one, you can go to AWS or Azure and launch whatever services are necessary and scale that with your cash flow. And I mean, that's absolutely phenomenal. So I think capitalism drives innovation. And the more we have capitalism in this country, the more we're going to see with technology, clear winners and losers. And, it's hard to say exactly where things go, but I'm excited about it. Just seeing how that all comes together and how some of these drivers, like I said, speed to, deployment and whatnot, how they move technology forward.
That's fascinating. What do you think about in terms of the development of the IT workforce, right? And software development. Where or when does the low code, easy UI interfaces like the explosion of people who became website developers because of WordPress or what's the other one? There's one or two other. Wix, I think, is
Wix.
Another. Yeah, so these low-code interfaces that provide UI elements for people to interact, and I think there's more and more push for getting a majority of society who isn't necessarily technologically savvy to not have to code something, but to use kind of a low-code environment where they could code without having to be a coder. Do you see that as an emerging trend, or how does that fit in, at least from the context that you're seeing in the IT space?
Well, I think those are more catered to, like I mentioned, like a startup or to a mom and pop pizza shop that really wants to work on their web presence. But there's always going to be a need for these back-end developers and even front-end developers who have an immense amount of skills and are flexible. They can work with different technologies, different clouds. That's not going anywhere. Behind all that low code is a ton of code. And so you have that need. It doesn't go anywhere, right? Like people say, oh, cloud is awesome. Yeah, well, we still have those servers. It's just somebody else's problem. It's not mine anymore. So I think from that perspective, all this low code stuff is great for the people that are the end users, but there's still tons of demand for those people to build these. And that's a heavy lift to present an interface to somebody who may not have a lot of technological skills and be able to set up a website quickly and easily and intuitively. I mean, the UX, the UI, the developers, there's a massive need there. So I don't see that going anywhere. I just see it continuing to increase.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. I think in the next 10 or 20 years, it's going to be interesting how VR kind of interfaces with software development. And because I've always kind of pictured this one VR simulation where somebody has like the Vive and they're drawing and you're able to build 3D models of art in the virtual space, right? And so then you're going to almost have the ability to go into a room where you could have many different commands and software to like either your scripts or your command line things that you're running. And I wonder if it'll like catch people's interest or help increase the wave, because I think more and more people getting into technology is the benefit of the future. I think the frontier of life, and I'm super excited, is Jeff Bezos' dream to build this space station, this centrifuge space station outside of planet Earth, and then the race to the moon and to Mars, right? And we haven't even started unpacking space manufacturing, which is going to, when it becomes a thing, right, the weightlessness of space and being able to do massive machinery and like movement and be able to capture the benefits of that environment. And I think just IT with satellites, with internet, and with everything, we just have so much potential for the future to build things.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not going anywhere. It's going to increase. It's just a matter of, I think now it becomes harder for somebody to keep up. And that's why I think people can't check into their job and then check out of their job every day. And that's it. You're going to be a dinosaur in a year. You just really, and it's not to say that everybody has to go out and get certifications, but learning, being excited about that, being passionate about what you're doing. Maybe somebody's in IT and they're not passionate about it. You may be able to hang. You may be that guy that sits in some office, punching the keyboard every day, but to be a part of that and to really go somewhere, you have to be passionate about it, and you have to constantly to learn and increase your knowledge and be excited by what's coming down the road, and at least having an understanding of it. Maybe not owning it 100%, but at least see where things are going and be abreast of all that technological change, because it moves so quickly. I mean, you look at the size of, the first iPod and what it held and how many songs it held. And now you get these tiny micro SD cards that are, terabyte cards, like nothing.
Yeah.
You could lose it in the carpet if you drop it. It's insane.
So it's an interesting, kind of dilemma that we're talking about, right? It's almost like with the advent and acceleration of technology and the specialization of all these like different applications that are out there, all these different things that you can hook into your environment to basically power your applications or do some analytics or move something, push or pull in whatever way. So how do I want to take this? I feel like, is somebody just supposed to specialize and become a master in one language, or how does someone kind of like keep up to date and with the acceleration of all these things, or is there some application or software out there that you link your avatar with and kind of constantly gives you the appropriate content to keep you abreast of what's changing and is important to know?
Well, that's a great question. I think it all comes back to, like I mentioned, knowing who you are and knowing your strengths. Automation is something that drives me. Every team I go to, I'm the guy that is looking for a faster, better way to do things, and I want it automated. Don't tell me I have to come in every day and click the button 3 times. It's not going to happen. There is a way to click that button 3 times without me having to do it every day, and I'll be the guy to figure that out. So nice. Because I know that about myself, there's things I'm going to be attracted to as technological changes happen, and there's things that are going to be uninteresting to me. So I think that really boils down to, if you know yourself, you know your strengths, you know how you're wired, you're never going to go wrong. You're going to find these things, you're going to hear about them, you're going to experience them. And, if anybody's like me, when I get excited about something, it's over, it's done. It's going to happen. I don't need to even write it down as a goal. It's happening. But I think for somebody who's maybe trying to decide, I think you have to experience things. And that goes back to the learning, playing with Azure and playing with AWS, or experiencing, what does it mean to write code? Like, I'm not really big on coding. I know a little bit. I script a lot in Bash, and I do configuration management with Ansible and stuff like that. But I would never call myself a software developer or somebody who's a coder per se. But, just to experience it and know, I can't be the guy. I couldn't sit all day working on Java. I just couldn't do it. I know that about myself. But I know that because I've been in enough positions, I've taken enough training to have experienced it and know, well, that's not for me.
Awesome. So if there's any entrepreneurs listening, I'd love to ask the question, in your experience, what do you see? And I love that you have this automation, the same enthusiasm I have, because I'm driven by that. It's one of those like things that just, man, I really, really always look for the optimization route if I can find it. But I'm also willing to kind of say, okay, is it going to take an unrealistic amount of time to save just a little bit of time? You almost have to kind of weigh that option in the moment. But what's taking in your awareness with the different technologies, or within the business or the company that you're a part of, or the things that you see, what things are taking potentially too long to accomplish, or are costing too much, that maybe if done in a different way, like somebody could, and maybe it hasn't even been thought of because that's just how things have been like kind of accepted to be. Like, does anything come to mind on that on that front?
Yeah. So being in government spaces, I think the perspective that I have, a lot of times there is this built-in mechanism where there's this bureaucracy, right? And there's meetings and there's planning, and almost deliberately slow, right? And maybe from a contractor side, it's billable hours. So they care about, let's bill as much as we possibly can. Whereas outside industry, you have financial, you have fintech and all this, where they have a ton of cash, but they're actually really about optimization and security and the drive to be faster and better because of true competition. The government doesn't have competition. The government's the government, right? But outside sector, public sector, there's such competition that you have to get better. You have to be faster. And I see that not being as much of a problem. That there's always issues in every industry, but I can only speak for myself in the government sector, that there really isn't an onus to do things faster or better. It's, whoever's guiding your program on the government side and what methodology they like, their waterfall or their agile or, they like to drive the ship this way, and that's kind of what's levied on the team. And then you're only as good as what your deliverables are, or, your sprint planning and how fast things are expected to be rolled out. So there's a lot of limiting factors. It is an industry where you're rewarded for spending more money. You're not rewarded for saving more money. So there's so many things that are built into that system that really cause problems, that there is no innovation per se that can break through. It really is kind of a built-in problem. So unless that mindset were to change, if the government were to start saying, we're going to give more money to the divisions or to the, DoD branches that use it more wisely or show the greatest return on investment, well, that would change things. There'd be a lot more innovation and opportunity for growth. But the way that the system is now, there's only so much that can be done.
Yeah, I'm not a expert on government contracting. I know some pieces, but I'm sure that there's a lot to it. But I definitely I can imagine some type of like performance incentive built into the contract, which in a way tries to accomplish what you're stating. Seems to make sense, because there's definitely a very, government it's a very fascinating thing because it's just such a massive group of people, and it's a massive group of public servants, people who are more government civilian, federal civilian level, and then you have the contractor base, which is people who are a little bit more higher compensated. It's almost like a private enterprise interfacing with government, and you have kind of this balance of, I would say, perspective and incentive, right? I think we have a challenge there, and then you've got these large contracts that are awarded, and sometimes, and I think there's a lot of people talking about this, and I definitely want to do a little bit more research. Perhaps maybe we have another call when we go into this, but really trying to align the pace of technology development with the realistic perspective of what contracts, how they need to be defined, how they need to be awarded, and how to measure the effectiveness, and to put almost like a financial attach financials to performance and the effectiveness of what did we do and accomplish.
Yeah, and you do see that. I'm speaking more generally, but to be fair, there are contracts that are performance based, and that have those added financials. But like you had mentioned, the government is so large; it's this big lumbering beast. It is the nature of the beast. But for somebody like myself that's so fast paced, and I want change, and I know that there's a better way, and I'm up on the rooftop screaming about it. I can't move that, but I think, again, capitalism solves those problems. Right now, it seems to me, a lot of contracting companies, they all look and feel the same, right? They all have the company branded face masks. Once COVID came out, like, it was so unique. Everybody did it, right? Bandit signs littering, the drives to and from your government buildings. Come work for us, big, large bonus. We just won contracts. But very few companies actually stand out. And I think that is what makes the biggest difference right now, is having a company stand out in every way from their competitors.
Can you describe, like, in your experience, like, what's really stood out about like a company, or been like a feature or a characteristic that really made you feel like, wow, this is a different company?
I would say it's very rare to see that, but COVID was one of those things that brought out the best and the worst of companies. So COVID happened, and before there was CARES Act coverage for contractors, there were companies that came out immediately and said, we don't care what happens. We have a war chest, and we will dig into it as far as we need to keep people here and to compensate them. And then there are other companies that said, start burning leave. And once your leave runs out, we're going to see what we can do, and we may have to cut people loose. So seeing that was very eye-opening. To me, it's very easy to plaster stuff on a website and say, my company we're cybersecurity experts, just because you've maybe got a couple billets on a cybersecurity contract. But to actually be that company, or to say culture, and, they use all these buzzwords, but when push comes to shove, when they actually show up and do what they say, that's the differentiator. And I think that's where companies can set themselves apart. And just forget about competing for a minute and just focus on what you bring to the table, and then do exactly what you say you're going to do. And that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. If, if you were to look into starting a company today, what area would you focus on, or where do you see the most value to engage with? Is it government? Is it private? Is it maybe fintech you described before? What industry or what area would you focus on?
That's a great question. So I think I would want to go private sector. Personally, I think there's a lot in private sector. There's a lot of opportunity. There's the ability to, in some respects, cut loose of, within the government, there's a lot of red tape. There's, and for some good reason, right? There are the ability to award contracts fairly, and to recognize small minority-owned businesses, and women-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses, and there's all that, and not allowing some massive contractor to come in and sweep up contracts. But I also see like a lot of stagnation and a lot of hesitation to adopt new technologies. So I think more can be done in the private sector for that reason. And that's personally where I would focus.
Is there a niche in private sector or a certain industry that you'd be curious about or would want to explore?
I haven't really thought about that. I've been very entrepreneurial for a long time, but in the past couple of years, I've had not a real inkling of where I would go or what I do. So I haven't really moved on that. So I couldn't really tell you, but I think given my love of fitness and health, it would have to be in that space.
Cool. And I think you even have a side like coaching thing where you do help with people, and you already are exercising that curiosity that you have. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I had a supplement company.
Okay.
And mainly sold off of Amazon, but I was selling on jet.com. I was working my way up in terms of revenue to being able to sell on Walmart as a minimum $1 million a year revenue to be able to sell on Walmart.
Really? I did not know that. Yeah. So for you to get into Walmart and either in-store or online Walmart, you have to have $1 million in revenue at least for your product.
Yeah. So I was working that route and learned a lot of lessons along the way. But ultimately, I love Amazon. Great, in terms of what I've learned from them, and, who doesn't like getting something online and having it at the door the next day or 2 days later, right?
Yeah, it's hard to beat. I enjoy it.
But there was also this downside where I was using their platform to get customers, to sell my product. But behind the scenes, Amazon is looking at all these third-party sellers, watching their metrics, watching their conversions, and then slowly cutting out the competition and having their own Amazon-branded products, which are using the best conversion tactics and strategies and keywords and everything else that all these third-party sellers were using. I
think it's an explosion of entrepreneurial spirit in America. Yeah. And it is, I will say, unfortunately, that's the fair capitalism at play.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely like it's a
two-edged sword.
It's a two-edged sword. They did a great job. I mean, there was even a time, I think my brother, looked into doing like drop shipping or like finding some niche product on Amazon. And there's people selling courses and like, oh, buy my program, I'm making, $200,000 a month on Amazon. And I just feel like if it's really that good, you're going to get competed against. And there's going to be a lot of people going for that opportunity, which is everything. And I think it's wild to hear and see that. And I've even purchased some of those Amazon ones. And because I can just really feel that the Amazon basic version, I know that they've put in the time and I am getting a decent quality product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's insane. And just to see the amount of Chinese sellers that now are, you're buying shoes on Amazon. And my son likes these pair of shoes. I just bought them, but it says just so on the side of the shoe. Like, how is that? Just so, right? And like nonsensical words and stuff like that. But they have had thousands of products in their factories from American companies. And they're just taking these same products, manufacturing themselves and putting them on Amazon. So, but you're right. That is capitalism, but that spirit doesn't die, right? Somebody's going to go on and there's going to be the next iteration. And, there's a book written years ago in the 70s, and a guy talks about where he sees markets going. And he talks about, which was for him in the future, a time where people are going to have what you see as like this Amazon. You click a button and it's at your door. But it's going to return to a more tactile environment where people want to touch and feel a product. And I think that's the next iteration, right? We're going to be moving from this online fast pace to more of a Etsy, where things are handcrafted and they're more personal. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But,
I think I've noticed on Etsy, though, that there are some personal things, but I think the Chinese, or the wholesale manufacturer people, they found Amazon making money. And then I know that some of them moved to Etsy, and then drop shipping is like such a popular thing. You familiar with drop shipping?
Yeah, I used to drop ship as well. So I've pretty much experienced the whole slew of online businesses, and it's just amazing to see how quickly they move, how quickly, those people selling those courses are the people that made it on Amazon, made it big, and then they're not making money anymore. So now they're rolling out a course to tell people how they made money. Because let me tell you from experience, when you're making $10,000, $12,000 a month.
Hold up. Everybody heard it. You've heard it here with Tom Ziebro. Share the truth.
Yeah, the money's starting to flow in. I mean, at one point, I was taking out $20,000, $30,000 loans left and right to buy more supplements to sell. You don't have time to make a course, and I don't want to tell anybody what I'm doing. I just want to make money, right? So, but once that falls apart, you do have these guys, or maybe it's just too stressful for them. But anytime I see a course like that, I'm like, he either made it or he's just done with it right now, and he's passing it along to somebody else.
Yeah. That's how I see it too. And I think there are some like valuable things out there. Depends on like what type of course you're buying, but just be mindful, I think, when you're buying courses from people on how to be successful in a business niche.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's always good to get mentors and advice, but sometimes the Instagram or Facebook, the ease of how easy it is today to literally start. You can start a fake page, and I've even seen these pop up, and because I do like exploring fashion on Instagram. It is a unique platform, I think, to get ideas and see different brands and get exposed just to different concepts.
Sure.
But I have seen even like legitimately just a brand new drop shipping website, and then just scamming reviews already like on the web when I'm doing some Googling, trying to figure out, is this, this website is one, poorly designed and has unbelievable like discounts the more money you spend. And it's so easy for them to start this shell of not even a company. It's just I don't want to say that all of them are scams. But there are some that you literally put in an order and you're not going to get your product. And then you have to either decide, is your time really worth trying to get back $50 or $200?
Yeah.
You're going to spend 10, 20 hours of stress? And is it really money that, some people it would be, and I totally get that. But there's a lot of times where if I'm in a situation like that, I'm like, is it worth my time and focus? And also my just mindset.
Yeah.
But the websites are, they're just so easily marketed on Instagram and Facebook and Google, and you can easily spin up any product or service. And with enough cash, you can really, and conversion metrics, right? Because they're just basically betting on, hey, I can start this fake website, or maybe they're just starting a brand new product that they're not serious about, or maybe they're starting a product that they are thinking about getting into, and they're using the drop shipping method of, let me see if I can even get conversions for this product, market and see, is the marketing formula, I spend $1,000, but I get $2,000 out, right?
Yeah.
Net positive 100%. So
yeah, I think it's worth exploring, my journey through all that. I was churning through $5,000-$6,000 a month on Amazon just in ads. And
Wow, so you did that.
Oh yeah.
My God.
Testing conversion and what's working and what's not working. And then giveaways. You got to get reviews. So I was giving away product for free. So I was burning through thousands of dollars a month just in giveaways where I'm not getting anything back, and I'm hoping for a review. I'm not even guaranteed that review. But there's something about that process where I learned. Now, I wouldn't tell my kids now to go out and be a sucker and just throw cash at whoever. But again, that discovery is so important in building. I wouldn't call myself an entrepreneur, but building that spirit within me, I had to make those mistakes. One of the first websites I started, I went $10,000 in debt doing search engine optimization. And so I had this $10,000 bill, and I was making like $50 a month, and it was just horrible. And customers were the worst in the world. So I ended up building a website using what I learned through these search engine optimization techniques. And within 3 years, made $100,000 off that website, paid off my debt. But it was being in that quagmire, that led me out onto the hill where I'd learned. So I always tell people, don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Like, don't put all your money on the table, but get your feet wet. Get in there and try it, because that is how you learn, and that's what you learn what doesn't work. It's just as important as what does work.
Right, because it's almost we have a very binary choice reality, right? It's either you could get overwhelmed with, multiple choices, but a lot of times it's like, well, do I do this or do I do this? And, is this the right product or is this the right product? Should I do left or right? Which is so important to like be able to filter out the waste of time and the waste of the decisions that don't route to the funnel of revenue.
Right.
Rising. So your website, can you describe, I might have not fully understood. So you had a website, and were you selling SEO, or no, you invested in search engine optimization?
I invested. I was trying to sell t-shirts, and I wasn't getting a lot of traffic. So I contracted with an SEO company. And I didn't really know anything about the business. And they said, hey, for every keyword we get you on, page 1 in Google, you pay X amount. And I said, okay, sounds great. Well, the keywords they chose for me were like ridiculous, like, little tiny t-shirt with short sleeves or whatever, which, might get 8 people a month searching for. I didn't know that. I wasn't really aware of search volume and buying keywords.
Yes.
Some people might type in funny t-shirt, but they just want to look at a funny t-shirt. It's very different than buying funny t-shirts or where to buy funny t-shirts. So I ended up getting this massive bill, and they were billing each month. And I finally said, I can't afford this. So $10,000 was my way out of the contract. So as a result, I had very few sales. So I actually started an alternative energy blog, which at the time, I'm very visionary. Like, I know what's coming out. I see what's big in the future. At the time, that was still pretty new of a category, I'd say. There was a website, Tree Hugger, that was out at that time. And you started to see more people talking about alternative energy. So I started this website, and I applied what I learned through the search engine optimization company. So how they changed my keywords, how they used linking, where they got backlinks for me and stuff like that. So I started this company and I didn't really know a lot about alternative energy. So I was on Google and Wikipedia and just writing articles about alternative energy and posting these articles. I was using WordPress, eventually WordPress, but at one point it was just static HTML web pages and just pumping out content. And I started putting Google Adsense on my pages. And because of Google AdSense, I had people clicking on ads. Well, it started out $30 a day, $50, $70, $100 a day. It just continued to grow to the point where I actually hired a writer, and he wrote articles, and I would go out and do research on, what I thought were really good keywords to target. And ended up at one point out of, I believe, like 6 or 8 million search results, I was number 4 on Google for alternative energy. And then,
wow.
Yeah, President Obama.
That's incredible, Tom.
President Obama was giving a State of the Union address and mentioned solar shingles. And that was one of my keywords. And I made like $400 in 3 hours just on AdSense. So I was like, okay, well, I have something here. So, so but that journey was only made possible by me being in debt. I would never have set out doing that. And most, I would say, of what has happened to me in my life is a result of being in a bad situation or learning from my mistakes. So that's now why I feel, knowing my strengths and knowing who I am, I'm not afraid to make mistakes because I know that there's learning at the end of it. So that's kind of where now I'm comfortable with that. I'm okay doing that.
Wow. So is there even a concept, which I've heard in some other interview that I was listening to, one of my mentors, is almost eliminating the concept of failure.
Yeah,
because from the
it's learning.
Equation, it just is you either give yourself, okay, this is a failure, and you go into the mindset of making yourself feel like a victim, or you've lost opportunity, right? When instead, if you would have completely removed that as a possibility and just focused on the learning from it, and even giving yourself maybe laughing at the situation, I think with some humor, and just being like, how many people just drop off? And I think there's a lot of people that just go right into the victimhood mindset, right? Yeah. I think that is sometimes a common thread. It's an automatic reaction to, I think, protect, or the ego within ourselves to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's reframing. So I learned there was all this frustration. I couldn't get a script to work, or, I couldn't figure out how to make something work, or things weren't happening the way I wanted them to. And going from that thought that this is bad to, hey, there's a discovery at the other end of this. And the more I work on this, the faster I'm going to get there. Now, sometimes you do need to step away. Sometimes you need to clear your head. I've always found that walking away for a little bit and coming back, I have ADD, so it's constantly on the brain. I'm thinking about it. I'm mulling it over, but being excited by the process, because I know always on the other side of that failure, if it is not the answer, then it's a lesson. And that's just as powerful sometimes as the answer. Wow. That is such a statement. That is, can you say it one more time? On the other side of side of failure is a lesson, which sometimes is just as powerful as the answer. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That is a piece of wisdom, Tom. There's a piece of wisdom. What if you look back at your life, and maybe we already kind of talked about something. If you were to give advice to someone going through their life, either starting a business or they're starting a career, or let's say they're already in business, maybe they're already somewhere, down the road. Does anything come to mind that you would like to share as just some advice from your experience to give them? So I'll sound like a broken record, but find your strengths and capitalize on them. I think that people like Elon Musk, that man knows who he is. He knows how he's wired. He could care less what the shareholders think. He doesn't care what industry thinks. He's so connected to who he is and his ideas and his confidence in himself that when the man says he's going to go to Mars or do X, Y, and Z, he's going to do it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So, but that comes from a deep understanding of who he is, and trusting that intuition that he has and the strengths that he has inside himself. That's so powerful. Anyone who's ever tried to do something they're not comfortable with, you don't project confidence, and you certainly don't feel it. You're not going to crush it. And working on, like I mentioned before, being an accountant. If you give me a scrub brush and send me into the bathroom, I'll out clean the bathroom. You could put 20 guys next to me. I'll make that bathroom cleaner than those 20 guys. But that doesn't mean that's what I'm good at doing, right? I have to know how I'm wired, what my strengths are. One of my strengths are that I'm going to give 100% every single time. I'm not putting my name on it unless I can give it all I've got. So that doesn't serve me necessarily cleaning a bathroom. That serves me knowing, well, I can be more visionary, or I can help a company do X, Y, and Z, or I can take a person who's never had success in the gym or in the kitchen and totally transform their body, right? That is me taking my confidence and my strengths and marrying the two. And sometimes it's hard to do as an entrepreneur to say, I'm building a business I'm not passionate about, or I'm in the wrong industry, or I'm not feeling this. You have to own that confidence and those strengths. You may be able to fake it for a while, but ultimately real success comes from those two.
Yeah, having a real key combination of confidence and having yourself, I think, in the right environment where you have a strength. And that's a part of confidence, but it's either a strength of either ability to communicate, either it's your ability to hustle. I think there's two big type of founders. There's either the builder founder, which is someone that's really good at developing and they're the more techie, type of person, or they're the ones that are architecting or designing. And then you have the other type of quality founder, which is the hustler, the person that's possibly driven on sales, relationships, focusing on outbound reach and connecting relationships with other people, and even potentially even marketing. I think those are almost like the two options you have if you are starting a company, if you are looking into, or maybe even just pioneering a new idea. I think Elon Musk, from starting PayPal, I think he's, obviously I think he's more of the developer. He's the builder. He's that guy with the architect. But I don't know if he's really the one that wants to go and do the sales calls or take clients out to dinner,
right,
or, go to the conference and do the conference commando thing, right?
Yeah. There's a book I read several years ago called Rocket Fuel. And the author describes exactly what you're talking about, knowing that a visionary is maybe not going to be that guy that's good with administrative tasks. So having the right partnerships in a business to make it successful. I had a mastermind group for a while, and if it was up to me to schedule meetings and keep track of all that type of stuff, forget about it. But you put me on a meeting at any time of the day or night, and I could run it, and I could bring the energy and the enthusiasm, and it was just, I owned it. But that side of the business, I didn't. And after having read that book, the first thing I did was partner with a friend of mine and said, look, I know you're good at this stuff, and here's what I'm good at. And it was successful as a result because of me knowing where my strengths lie and then relying on him and vice versa to carry each other. So that's super important.
Yeah. Big synergy. Need to have, and I think one of my advisors looked at the founding when I started this company that I'm running right now, Cybergen. I did have a partner at the very beginning who was more of the tech, the builder, and the more analytical mindset, and had more unique experience, I think, in the military, IT, and government industry than I did. But it was really the combination. I think as a venture capitalist, he would say they want to see two founders that have that opposite pole and have that complementing, not two techies that are potentially going to, I think there's going to be some disagreements at some point in a company, but if you're too like-minded, I don't think you can really appreciate the opposites that you bring. Because if you're both the same type of person, it's like, well, okay, we're the same person, or maybe you might feel like you can do it on your own. But in reality, it's really effective to have two people that connect and that can bring in, that synergy of knowing what you're best at, knowing what your strengths are. So
yeah, absolutely. You absolutely have to have that balance 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. Really cool to see how those different events and the obstacles that you've overcome in your life, and how you went from that t-shirt business, and then you had the Google advertising thing with the t-shirt business, and then you moved into supplements, right? And you had that whole adventure, and that's helped kind of like mold you in a way. And this is all just you're entrepreneurial. I mean, you're working 40 plus hours a week on site, doing your technology career, right? And this is just stuff that you're hustling on the after hours.
Yeah. So it wasn't until I found out I had ADD. I'm like, okay, no wonder I'm so different. Like, if it's not being in the gym or coaching people, I always had to have some side hustle. But for me, it was awesome because not only was it bringing in money, but I was discovering who I was in the process. And that's where the real wealth is. I know now I could have everything removed from myself and I can become successful again. I can get back to where I am because I've conditioned myself to believe certain things about my abilities and my skills and, my relationship with money. All that is so important, but the only path to that, it's not a book. It's not, quick and easy path. It's listening to podcasts, and it's doing the learning and spending the time playing around and failing and learning from those mistakes. It's a combination of all of it. The biggest problem I see with the industry I'm in is there's a lot of show up, punch the clock, and then go home and Netflix and chill. For me, I love my country. I want to see my country be awesome. And I know there's so much more potential, especially within the government, things that we could do, technology we could bring to bear. It's disappointing to see that. So I'm hoping that the more people I make contact with, I can bring some enthusiasm and some energy and saying, own what you do, be passionate about it. It's great to get that big check. That's awesome. But showing up and having a purpose and doing the best job you possibly can in spite of the bureaucracy or in spite of the limitations that we have, you are a better person for it, and everybody ends up being better for that as well. Yeah.
Jocko Willink would say, holding the line. You are helping hold the line of progress.
That's right.
And man, on some levels, like you're either growing or you're almost not growing. You're almost going in reverse. It's very fascinating. I think on the meditation or the spiritual side, the equanimity that we can get ourselves into and be at peace, right? But if you literally just were at peace every day, and I would say that this probably is still a good, I think we all should kind of move towards having our default state be happiness and be at peace. But at the same time, if you do that for a week, I think that's great. And you could do it for a little bit longer, but you want to combine action from a state of peacefulness, but not getting caught up in like what you're saying. I think we as human beings, we miss out on so much potential, and we need to be easy on ourselves. I think we need to kind of look out for ourselves and try to take care of ourselves as we're growing and as we're pursuing, working 8 hours a day in a technology type of position, exercising your mind. That does take resources. It does take attention, but I think there's multiple dimensions to our experience that we're able to pursue if we make them a part of our mindset, if we put them out there, if we think about the habit plan that we talked, I think, at the very beginning of this, right? It's like, if I do this on a regular basis, if I go to the gym, if I add that to my routine, or if I have a hobby that I find time to, or if I sit and contemplate with my inner, my inner soul, or my, my inner peace, or my, experience, or the, my connection to the universe or the higher power, those are all things that kind of like add to the quality and the overall human experience that that we're having.
Yeah. I think too many people are doing maybe jobs that they don't like, or they're not finding those, gratitude is one of those things that the more you practice it, the more you program your mind to look for it, right? If you're waking up every day writing 3 things you're grateful for, and it can't be the same thing that you write every day, well, you're constantly thinking, what are my blessings? What's cool about my life right now? How am I blessed right now? And that type of mindset, it becomes, it grows and it becomes part of your psyche and part of how you view the world. And one of the most powerful images I've ever seen was the picture of a mind, and there's a projector behind the eyes, and literally the experience that we have in life is played out through the mind. So approaching your day with excitement and enthusiasm is massive. When you get that flat tire on the way to work, you could be like, wow, I'm so grateful I work for a company where I have so much leave that this is a drop in the bucket. I'm not dependent on working every single hour to bring home that paycheck and to cover my bills. And I would say that's true even for people who may not be in that situation. There's always a reason to be grateful. And operating from that place does massive things for, like I said before, not only yourself, but those around you. It's addictive. If you've ever sat next to people who are enthusiastic and excited, you start getting enthusiastic and excited, right? You don't go to Tony Robbins conferences and find the guy walking around on stage with his head down, and his shoulders slumped forward. He makes this big production, and it's because it heightens everybody's enthusiasm and awareness. And I think it's an easy reach, but most people, like I mentioned earlier on, 60% of our day is done out of habit. And it's just too easy to keep repeating that cycle day in and day out, when all it takes is little subtle change. Maybe sleeping in your gym clothes before you go to bed. So you wake up and they're on. And the next logical thing is to go to the gym, or, to hang a bag of salad on the front handle of the house so that you take a salad to work instead of ordering fast food and having it delivered to the office. Little things that break up those routines. And then from that you can build. And with that building comes that excitement and the change. And then it's possible to really re-architect how you live your life.
Yeah, that's powerful. Do you have in your daily ritual top 3 or top 5 concepts or goals that you kind of revisit? Do you have a consistent, this is on an everyday checklist where I'm constantly trying to align myself to?
So my, I guess for lack of a better word, mantra is to honor God, honor my name, who I am, honor my family. And then one of my goals is to leave people better off for having met me than they were before they met me. So whether that's to make them smile, or to give them a tip or advice that maybe brings them more money or better relationships, but in some way I want to touch people and leave them better just for having met me. And those kind of drive what I do in my day. And I kind of operate from that mindset. And it keeps me on track. Now, my goals are always evolving and changing. And I used to be very programmatic about how I wrote my goals and, my subtasks, and it became too much of a burden. And now I operate more out of gut and intuition. But those are kind of my guiding principles. And I know that when I'm in that space, things are going to happen, and it's going to be good.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Those are powerful words. And I can feel the conviction and the, how close of a real purpose that is to your life.
Absolutely.
When you said that. Yeah. That's powerful stuff. So Tom, if you had to, or if you could change the world in any way, how would you change it?
Gosh, might sound silly, but I'd shut off the news completely. I think that's one of the things, and it probably adds a lot to people showing up at work not being in a good mood, but I just can't stand watching the news, reading the news, hearing the news. And my wife is always asking me, how will you know what's going on in the world? I'm like, well, you'll tell me, or somebody else will, or if Russia's attacking us, I'm pretty sure I'm going to find out. But there's so much we can't control. There's so much negativity. And there are things we should be abreast of, Black Lives Matters is something that every human being, every person that calls herself an American citizen should be concerned about and should be in some way, shape, or form be proactive about that. So there are benefits to it, but I think by and large, the news is negative and it draws people in. It's that car wreck that people slow down to look at. And there's nothing positive that comes out of it. 9 times out of 10, people are telling you about something that happened in the news that's bad and not positive. And I find like LinkedIn is a great place. I'm always seeing positive stuff on LinkedIn. So there's other avenues really to get that dose of inspiration every day. But, the news would be gone. Forget about it. I just don't feel it adds anything to human existence at all.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you really point out a very important area that I think a lot of people get caught up in. And I believe the same thing. There are many, many times where there's things going on that I'm not privy to just because I don't consume news myself. And I do use LinkedIn, and I find it as a pretty good resource to see what's going on. And I think the algorithms, the way they work, I might be liking things and continuously receiving more of the things I liked. So that's a whole nother conversation to have.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that would make a big difference because it would help people think, which I think through our conversation, we both believe our life is majorly made up of how we're thinking on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you let the morning almost slide off into, oh, wow, there was, God forbid, like a shooting or like something that happened in the area or nationally or, tragedy that's happening, suffering that's happening. And I don't want to diminish at all. I think there's very visceral, real suffering in the world that overall is really sad. And I want to have, more and more people working on solving those issues and trying the best, which I think technology has a very important place in working
Sure.
out those problems. But overall, to go through your day, to really vanguard your mind and protect how easily we are influenced by what happened 30 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago or 10 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And the decisions that come after that.
And not to mention, too, the fact that it's so dividing. I can find somebody at the completely opposite end of the political spectrum as myself, and we could have a great conversation because we're human. There's something that we share in common, or there's something that is completely opposite about that person that may be exciting or novel. But I feel like the news is just conditioned people to make them see everybody through the, labels and, they're not like me versus, what you saw after 9/11, our country came together. There was a time we all experienced pain together. All that stuff was put to the side and people realized the importance of humanity and, coworkers they lost in an office and how that, maybe their office mate just brought in candy bars that their daughter was selling that week and now he's gone and what's his daughter going through? And, it brought about healing and reconciliation in some ways where I just feel the media is constantly dividing. And I think the most powerful thing in the planet are people working together, people who truly put aside their differences and link arms and unite and work together to make a positive impact. And I just don't see how the media supports that in any way.
Yeah, powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. And that's one thing I would love to see the world change, or at least maybe if someone hears this conversation that we're making, reminding people that there are others that think this way. And, I want maybe somebody that works in the news to reconsider what they're about to post next.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we're coming to the end here. I would like to give you just a shout out. If anybody would like to reach you, Tom, is there any way that they can look you up or get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I pretty much, unless you're trying to desperately sell me something or offer me offer me, cheat sheets or something. Other than that, I'm pretty much accept all my LinkedIn requests.
Nice. And then for the coaching, do you do any of that nutrition, or is that virtual at all, or only in person?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn would be a good place. I limit how many clients I have at one time. I'm pretty selective about that. I can tell right off the bat how ready somebody is to take that plunge. So I've learned over the years, at first I was like, whoever wants to sign up. And then I learned there are people who they're ready. And so I do a little bit of filtering before I send them to a website to actually bring them in as a client. So yeah, LinkedIn is probably just the best place to find me.
Awesome. I'll include that in the description below.
That'd be great.
And yeah, I just really appreciate this conversation.
Same.
With Tom Ziebro being on the call, and we made an impact, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. Love your story. And Tom, I wish you have a great day. For everyone listening, thanks for tuning in, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Cheers.
Thank you.